Hi there, welcome to the channel. My name's Mikey, you're listening to MG Sport Now. I've watched some film on these quarterbacks coming out of the draft. I've got a pretty good idea of where I think they will rank, and today I'm going to be discussing that with you. We're only going to do the main 6 quarterbacks, but once I get through all the positions I might come back around and have a peek at some of the later round guys. Let's get into it. QB6, Michael Penix Jr. To be honest with you, I was greatly underwhelmed with Michael Penix Jr.'s talent. I was pleasantly surprised by the fact that he's not particularly flawed when it comes to accuracy and decision making. I don't think those sides of it are perfect, but he's fairly accurate, makes a lot of good throws, especially downfield, which is where the misconception comes in. Being able to make throws downfield doesn't mean you have a strong arm. There's not many quarterbacks in the league that can't make a 60-yard throw. They can all do it. They can't all do it with the right amount of velocity. And the right amount of velocity in college might not be enough in the NFL. And to clarify, it's not particularly the deep balls that I'm worried about. I think he probably can do that, but I don't think he's got enough arm talent to consider him a first round talent. He's also very much a below average athlete. By today's standards, off platform stuff, he really struggles. So there's not a nice way to put it. I don't think he's quite got enough talent for me. So if you're taking a guy like that, he has to be super high floor, and I just don't see him as that guy. I think he will reach his upside, but his upside is a low level starter. So to me it's second or even third round. Not to mention, by the way, the injury history. I know he's been cleared, but if you're not sure about him, the injury history might push you over the edge to not take him. My QB5 is Bo Nix. Full transparency, Bo Nix is one of these guys where my opinion on him has fluctuated through the process of watching film. There was a time where he was my QB3 in this class. I had my concerns, but I thought he could work through them, and then the more I watched, the more I thought this could be an issue. He throws the ball well, he's accurate, he's smart, he's a mature decision maker, he runs a pro style offense for the most part. All of these things added up to me as someone who I'd take early in the draft. My one concern was that he is very conservative, but I thought, well, that's just what they're asking him to be. Once he gets to the NFL, he has the talent to make all the throws, and coaches can help him in that process. However, the more I've watched it, the more I've thought there's a mental block here. We know that at Auburn he was kind of the opposite of what he is now. Put the ball in harm's way far too often, felt like he was mocked as a quarterback during that time, and he's clearly drilled it into himself to do everything he can to not put the ball in harm's way, and credit to him for doing that. But I'm a huge fan of quarterbacks who take advantage of every opportunity. There's a difference between being stupid and making the most of what's there to be had, and far too often Bo Nix wants to take his check down rather than make the 15-yard ball that can really impact the game. Now, like I said, I think he can make all the throws. I don't think it's an outstanding arm, but I think it's a good arm. He can make some off-platform throws. He can do some of the sidearm stuff that you see in today's game. And I think if you're Sean Payton, for example, with the Broncos, you look at this guy and think, maybe this is worth the 12th pick in the draft. Because the Broncos look like they could be a good team. A coach like Sean Payton wants to program his guy into thinking the way that he thinks. And a rookie who's bright enough is the perfect guy for that, because he's not had all of this other information from other coaches drilled into him. Peyton can make him what he wants to make him. But at the end of the day, for me, between it being fine talent-wise, but not outstanding, and him being a little bit too conservative, he's an older prospect, meaning you think this might be what he is. He might not have time to adapt his brain the way I've been talking about, because he's already played for 5 years. I just don't see this being a top 10-ish guy in the league. If he did fall to the second round, I'd be all over it. I think you're getting a good quarterback on a cheap deal, with the upside of him developing into a top 15 quarterback that can just about be your franchise guy for the next 10 years. Not that many guys stick around for that long anyway. So it's fine lines, because like I say, there was a time where I was much less concerned about some of the things I was seeing that I didn't like so much. And then the more you watch it, the more you think, is this really going to change? My QB4 is Drake Maye. So why am I so low on Drake Maye? He's big, he's got a great arm, decent athlete. Here's where it falls down for me. We'll get to some of the other guys, and you do not see them miss the throws that Drake Maye misses. You can talk about raw, you can talk about everyone's raw when you're coming out of the draft. The 4 guys in front of him do not need even close to the amount of work that Drake Maye needs to reach his potential. You can say he's on a bad team. He misses throws with a clean pocket a lot. He misses a lot of throws from a clean pocket. His processing is bad. I'm not saying it can't improve, but I'm not willing to beat around the bush either and make it out like, oh, it just needs work. The processing is all over the place. It's often frantic, 1 read to the 3rd read, back to the 1st read, run around a bit, pocket movement's poor, does a lot of jumping around, leaves himself in trouble. One of the key things in the NFL is being able to hold your ground. There's always a guy in the NFL that you can see out the corner of your eye who's gotten ahead of the tackle. It's only pressure if you aren't able to understand where the space is and when you really need to take off. Drake Maye hasn't understood that yet. It's a very elongated motion. It's not a quick release, which again makes a big difference in the league. A bigger difference than it does in college, for sure. So regardless of whether you think North Carolina's a good team or a bad team, he'll be in a worse situation when he's in the league. I've watched a ton of film. Poor processing is showing up every few plays. So I don't know why I'm now controversial for saying a guy who's blatantly not ready probably isn't going to magically become this super refined quarterback when he gets to the league. He needs great coaching and he needs to change. He needs to take a big jump, and if he does, he'll be phenomenal. But why do we assume that he's going to take a big jump? Because Patrick Mahomes did? Because Josh Allen did? Okay. Zach Wilson didn't. Trey Lance didn't. Justin Fields hasn't. Those are 3 quarterbacks from the same class. The other guy was Mac Jones, who, by the way, is a great example of why you don't just take the so-called pro-ready guy. He was assumed to be a safe pick. He wasn't talented enough. Trevor Lawrence was the only one in that class that worked out, and he was considered pro-ready at the time, as well as being talented. I'm not against talent. I'm against talent on its own. I want to see evidence that you can do it. And then good coaching and the ability to learn and withstand pressure is what helps you with that jump up to the NFL. But you have to be close enough. So where can Drake Maye land and find success? I'm a Commanders fan, as it happens, but I think we're pretty nailed on to take Jaden Daniels, to be honest with you. I think if you're the Patriots and you're taking him 3, I think you're asking for a disaster. He's not ready, especially if you're asking him to start straight away with a bad team. That won't work. I don't see any world in which that works, to be honest with you. To me, the interesting fits would be teams that could sit him for a bit. I don't hear much talk about the Saints taking a quarterback, but for example, that would be one to me that makes sense. Derek Carr, there's no signs of him taking the Saints to a Super Bowl or even the playoffs at this rate, but he's going to be there for, we assume, a year or 2 more. That would be a great place for Drake Maye to sit for a year or 2. I think the Vikings can work as well. I know people don't like Sam Darnold. That's an easy take to have. He's not had a bright career so far. He's certainly had his issues. But I've got a feeling the Vikings are bringing Sam Darnold in to start. And if that's just a bridge option, which it probably is, I think that's a good bridge option, and Drake Maye can take over from Sam Darnold in a year or 2 on what is a pretty functional team, even though they struggled so much last year. But I think he needs to either sit or go into a team that's already good. To me, that's actually better than sitting. I think it is a positive thing to be playing, but you don't want to be playing on a team where you're not ready and you're picking up bad habits. I don't know if there is that team right now who's going to take Drake Maye and start him and find success because they're already built in the right way, but that can work because if the production's good, the media has your back. And if the media has your back, you gain confidence, you're not under so much pressure, you have a bit more time to work it out, and you're picking up good habits on a winning team. Personally, I'm not taking him in the 1st round. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. I would feel great about taking him in the 2nd round. But the reason it's not late 1st round is because I don't really think there's a spot for him there. I'm not taking him in the 1st round unless I think I've got the perfect situation for him, and not many of those exist. So realistically, for me, he should fall to the 2nd round. And it would be interesting to see if he does have some sort of fall, because I'm sure that there will be a large proportion of scouts that see the same things I do, because I'm not going off a hunch or trying to be clever. It's all there on the tape. It's blatant. And that will be seen by other scouts. So already you've seen Jaden Daniels odds-on favourite to go 2. It can't have been more than a few weeks ago that Drake Maye was absolutely nailed on. He's going 2 overall, if not 1, by the way. Now these scouts are watching it. There's a bit of information coming out of those camps. Suddenly Drake Maye's not the number 2 pick. How far does that go on? My realistic prediction, I think there is a world in which he falls to the second round, I think it will probably be that group just outside the top 10. Broncos, Raiders, Vikings. QB3, JJ McCarthy, Michigan. JJ McCarthy's in a unique situation. There's a lot of guessing going on. There's a lot of people who have opinions based on what they assume to be true, as opposed to actually watching what's going on the film. The reason McCarthy wasn't throwing the ball a lot, or wasn't asked to throw the ball a lot, isn't because he couldn't do it. It was because that's the way that Michigan win. McCarthy's arm jumped out to me. It was one of those, as soon as you turn on the film, it's like, well, that's something I haven't been told about. Like I was saying with Penix, it's not just the deep throws. That's how people end up making assumptions that aren't true. It's the velocity, it's the zip. And to me, I feel comfortable with this part of analysis because I think if you actually watch it on film, it's pretty obvious that someone like JJ McCarthy stands out. Because guess what? The ball gets to the other side of the screen faster than it does with Michael Penix. It's not hugely complicated. The guy's got an unbelievable arm. I'm a huge fan of his motion. It's very compact. I'm not an expert on mechanics, but it looks fluid to me, and I really like a compact motion because I think that gives you a huge advantage when you go to the next level. I wish he was a bit bigger, 6'2", so he's not tiny by any means, but I think that couple of inches that Trey has on him makes a big difference. However, the difference there, of course, is that JJ McCarthy is making throws consistently. Now, the difficult part of this analysis with McCarthy is that there were games where I watched it initially and I thought, okay, he's in the same tier as Drake Maye. Definitely talented. Probably, I would say, less talented than Drake Maye, for sure. I think that's fair to say. But to me, when I watch Drake Maye, he's got issues. He's throwing the ball a lot and he's consistently missing, and missing considerably. McCarthy seems to be missing because he's out of rhythm, and it's not every other play that he's missing throws. He'll just miss a throw where it seems like he's just not been able to find his range because he's been waiting 20 minutes to make a throw. But the more I watched, the more I liked, the more I came around on him. I think the processing could use some work. It's not flawed the way it is with Maye, and I'm not trying to pick on Drake Maye, but I have to compare because you probably want to know why I have McCarthy above Maye in this ranking, and some of the differences are subtle because I think McCarthy can get locked onto a read, get locked onto a receiver that he thinks is going to be open and doesn't go through his progressions properly, but it's not all over the place. It's not going back to basics. He seems like a great kid. I think he can learn. He seems to have the right balance of humility and confidence. And I also think he's refined enough to start year one. In terms of upside, I don't think he has the upside that Drake Maye has quite. I think Drake Maye's upside is borderline elite. I think McCarthy has more chance of reaching his upside, and I think his upside is top 10-ish. He's not super mobile, but he can accelerate and hit a nice speed. I'm not saying he's slow, he's not a plus athlete. And I haven't seen him do very much off-platform stuff. He wasn't asked to do it very often at all, but when I did see it, it looked like if it is going to come along, it needs some work. So I think top 10 is his upside, and I think you can feel good about taking him with the thought that you can make that happen if the team is functional. QB2, Jaden Daniels, LSU. I would put Jaden Daniels out of this group 5th in arm strength quite comfortably, so there's a concern right off the bat. But there's a fine line between someone who's held back by arm strength and someone who doesn't have plus arm strength. Daniels put enough velocity on all of his balls to throw into tight windows. Of course, I would love an explosive arm, but he has enough, and that's the difference. He is also probably joint second for me in accuracy with Bo Nix. Super consistent thrower. I know people have concerns with the amount of throws he's made over the middle, but the offense hasn't been set up for him to do that. He's not avoiding making those throws, he's just not asked to. And the offense has functioned at a very high level because they've set it up in that way. He makes plenty of throws into tight windows, and he's big enough to see over the middle. There's no reason why he wouldn't be able to make those throws. Now, of course, the elephant in the room is athletically. He walks into the NFL as probably the second best athlete in the league at quarterback. Not only does that give him a much higher upside, but it also gives him a higher floor. It means he has more of a chance to develop because you can win with him as a rookie without asking him to throw constantly. You can have a run-heavy offense and feed off his athleticism, but also people underestimate how much it opens up the passing game when you can run. It means teams have to keep spies around the box to avoid him finding those gaps and breaking loose. It also means pass rushers have to keep their gap integrity. They can't go all out to get to Daniels, because as well as trying to get to him, they need to maintain him. They can't leave gaps in the rush. Processing is pretty clean. There are times where I wish he would have pulled the trigger, and he'll have to go through reads at a bit more of an advanced level in the league. But again, these are things to work on, not flaws where you think you can't start him straight away and he might never get there. I think he's going to be good straight away, and the right team will help him along with these things. A dysfunctional team can make all of these guys look flawed. Maybe my biggest concern with Daniels is the frame. He looks very skinny. 210 pounds on a guy that's 6'4" isn't the same as a guy who's 6 foot and 210 pounds. He takes a lot of hits, and I worry that, like we saw with Richardson this year, he's not going to be on the field for that long. My QB1 is Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is a high floor prospect, and you will not have been told that throughout the year, because he didn't look like that on the broadcast. But that is because USC was a dysfunctional team, not because Caleb Williams is a dysfunctional quarterback. They put everything on his shoulders. He was asked to run around and make things happen, and a lot of the time he did. He has a phenomenal arm. He can make all sorts of throws off platform, on the run, etc. And he is clinically accurate. The processing is very clean. He is the best processor out of all of these prospects coming out of this draft. He had a rough game against Notre Dame where he was trying to make things happen, but it was 3 interceptions and he had 5 in the year. So the reaction to that was overblown, and the interceptions weren't as bad as they looked on first glance. They are forgivable. He is one of the most talented quarterback prospects coming out of all time, but I think his refinement and polish goes way under the radar. He's a character. I think a lot of people think he might not be the right character to be a quarterback in the NFL. I disagree. I think he's got that it factor, and he's going to make it work. So this is the ranking overall. The reality is, I feel pretty confident about Caleb Williams. Like I've just said, I think he can make it work even if it is a bad situation. I think he's that good. I think he's that clean as a prospect and that talented. Other than that, if the other 5 guys get drafted to dysfunctional organisations, they will all fail. That's the truth of it. So, moral of the story, I don't think these teams should feel obliged to take quarterback just because they're in that position. You have to at least make sure you have a plan for him, have a vision of how you make it easy for him to develop, as opposed to just throwing him in and expecting him to be good enough to make it work. That's not realistic at all. But a pretty good group, I think, overall. I could see 2 or 3 of them working out. I could also see it being Caleb all on his own if these guys aren't given the right opportunities. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time.